The Cash-Landrum Incident, December 29, 1980, Dayton, Texas, USA. On the evening of December 29, 1980, Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Vicky's 7-year-old grandson Colby were returning home after an evening out. They're driving along a 2-lane road in dense woods when they spot a bright light to the side and above the trees. Thinking that they were observing a low-flying plane approaching a local airport, they didn't initially give it much attention. That changed, however, a few minutes later when they rounded a bend and the light was now directly in front of the vehicle. Except this wasn't just a light. The witnesses described seeing a huge diamond-shaped object at treetop level in front of them, emitting flame and hot exhaust gases from a propulsion system at its base, causing a heat shimmer below it and the tops of the trees to move. The object appeared to be gently rising and falling as it hovered, maintaining its altitude by firing bursts of flame occasionally. Landrum told Cash to stop the car, fearing that if they got closer, the vehicle might get caught in the downwash or catch fire. They debated turning around, however the road was narrow and the car's turning circle was poor, meaning that they ran the risk of getting stuck in the soft ground at the side of the road if they tried the manoeuvre. Mesmerised by what they were seeing, both adults got out of the car for an unhindered view. However, Colby was, understandably, terrified at this point, so Landrum returned to the vehicle to comfort him. Cash described what she saw as a large, flat-ended, diamond-shaped object. It appeared to be a dull silver metallic colour with a line of blue lights around the centre. The object rose on each burst of flame from the base and then slowly dropped back down again to the level of the treetops. The heat being emitted by the object was now reaching serious levels, causing Cash to get back in the car. The vehicle's external metalwork had become too hot to touch, and she needed to wrap her hand in her coat to prevent being burned by the door handle. Inside the car, when Landrum put her hand on the dashboard, the vinyl was hot and soft enough to leave a permanent handprint. The object began to rise higher into the sky, and then appeared to be joined by a flight of helicopters. The witnesses counted 23 in all. The helicopters surrounded the object in a tight formation, and it moved away. When the area in front of them had cleared, the vehicle returned to a lower temperature, and they decided to proceed to their destination. All of this took place in the span of approximately 20 minutes. Getting home, the witnesses retired for the evening, only to find as the night progressed that all 3 of them started to fall ill. They experienced nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, extreme weakness, burning in their eyes, and what they described as a form of sunstroke. Of the 3, Cash was by far the worst. Over the next few days, Cash's health deteriorated further, with large blisters appearing on her skin and clumps of her hair falling out. She was admitted to hospital, released after 12 days, but then later returned for another 15-day stay. The Landrums fared better, but both had spells of extreme weakness, some skin sores, and hair loss. The doctors who examined all 3 of the witnesses came to similar conclusions. They had either been exposed to ionizing radiation due to exposure to a nuclear source, or they had been in the presence of a major chemical irritant. A local police officer and his wife claimed to have seen 12 military helicopters in the area on the night of the sighting. They identified the helicopters as the large twin-rotor Boeing Chinook type used extensively by military forces around the world. Other witnesses in the area reported seeing unusual bright lights in the sky, but did not describe the object in the same manner as Cash and Landrum did, possibly because they were not close enough. The US Air Force has denied any involvement in the incident, saying that none of their helicopters were flying in the area that night and that they do not possess a craft of the type and size described. Some investigators claim that Cash had pre-existing medical conditions that could have accounted for her illness. However, neither of the Landrums had similar conditions, and the opinions of the medical examiners who assessed all three at the time are clear. Both Betty Cash and Vicky Landrum are now deceased by natural causes. Colby, however, is still alive, and to this day suffers from flashbacks and panic attacks. He has remained consistent in his recounting of the story over the years, which adds much more credence to the sighting, as young children tend to embellish events and add to them as they get older, but this has not been the case. The US military has a proven track record of undertaking the secret testing of military aircraft, usually at its Nevada test facilities, but sometimes over populated areas. Throughout the 1960s, 70s and 80s, considerable research was undertaken into nuclear-powered aircraft propulsion. The majority of this research never saw fruition, however, as the exhaust gases produced cause radioactive contamination underneath the flight path of the aircraft that used them. It may be possible that Cash and Landrum were the unfortunate witnesses of a military test exercise of such a vehicle and suffered their illnesses as a result. It is worth noting that the internationally famous Rendlesham Forest Ufo sightings occurred the day prior to this incident. I'll discuss Rendlesham in detail at some point in a future podcast. However, there was considerable military involvement in that incident as well, and it may be that this was the same craft. In the shadowy world of conspiracy folklore, it has often been said that the US military operates a rapid deployment covert recovery team for incidents involving UFOs. This Black Beret unit is said to comprise of Special Forces operatives with access to any equipment they need to undertake on-site analysis and crash retrieval of objects. It has also been suggested that the US government has agreements with other nations around the world to deploy this unit in their territories or they will threaten military and economic sanctions for nations who resist that approach. It is possible that Cash and Landrum saw a retrieval of an extraterrestrial object under escort. Again, this could be tied to the Rendlesham Forest incident. Speculation aside, it is clear that these three people experienced a unique event that led to quantifiable side effects, corroborating evidence and some physical traces. The witnesses to the helicopters, a police officer and his wife, are credible. On-site investigators, looking at the vehicle, found the handprint in the dashboard as described. Pictures of Cash's injuries were taken when she was in hospital, and they are akin to those of survivors of nuclear and chemical incidents. My personal opinion is that this was a military test that experienced difficulties with unexpected consequences on the ground. Sadly, two of the people who experienced it will never know the truth. The third is unlikely to discover it either, but is still searching for answers. The case remains open. If you've enjoyed this lockdown story, please tell me in the comments below, and hopefully we'll do another. I'll speak to you soon.